welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we are bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It is Wednesday, March 15th, 2017. We got a lot of games today. I think there's about 10. So we got a lot to talk about. It's funny, even though there's a 10-game slate, and maybe it'll change as I kind of break down the slate with you guys, but I'm having a hard time finding guys that I love. Normally on a slate, there's 2, 3, 4 guys, whether they're studs, whether they're value guys you have your eye on. On Monday, Jeremy Lamb and Patty Mills, two guys that we'll talk about again today. On Monday, those were two locks for me. They were just so cheap, and they were coming into big roles. There's not much of that right now. Now things could change, things could open up. We have some injury news to think about, but there's nothing really that stands out as of now. And it's going to be interesting because there are studs. We got James Harden going today. He's in a phenomenal matchup against the Lakers. But even some of these games are pretty ugly. Utah at Detroit, Memphis at Chicago, Milwaukee at Los Angeles. Some of these games aren't so appealing as we've seen. Now, some of them are nice. You got Sacramento at Phoenix. That should be interesting. Minnesota at Boston should be interesting. Even Charlotte at Indiana is interesting. Obviously, you got the Lakers in Houston with a super high total. However, there's also a super high spread. So it's an interesting slate. It's not like the typical 10-game slate that I think we've kind of seen recently. It's a little bit different. I think it's going to be a little tough. It's going to be tough to find these plays unless things open up. Obviously, if things open up throughout the day, that could potentially make things easier. So Monday was interesting, and the reason I'm bringing up Monday is because we find ourselves in a situation where we could yet again see Jeremy Lamb and Patty Mills step into larger roles. Now, the reason on Monday I want to explain, because I did have a couple people ask me on Twitter, like, why was Lamb not fadeable at 3,500, even though we know about, the whole world is going to be playing Lamb. Well, the reason he's not fadeable is because he's so cheap. I mean, you got to think about it. He's priced as a reserve bench player, right? A guy that shares minutes with not just Batum, but even Bellinelli. So this is a situation where you got a guy who's priced to get anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, and you know for a fact he's going to get at least 30. That's a bargain. That's true value. When people talk about value, that's value. A guy that has a decent projected points per minute to begin with is now going to step into a role at a minimum price. And the same thing with Patty Mills. Patty Mills is a guy that typically comes off the bench. He doesn't get too much run, not typically more than 20 or so minutes in that range. And this was a situation where they were so thin at point guard that you knew he was going to get more of his allotted playing time. Not to mention LMA was out, so there was a little bit of a usage bump to go around, aside from the big usage bump Kawhi Leonard gets. So that's the difference. The difference is the price. It's all about the price. Today, even if the chips fall the same way, it's not so easy. Jeremy Lamb is priced up. DraftKings is smartened up a little bit. They are expecting maybe, but it's not that they're expecting anybody to be out. It's that they want to be covered if they are, to make the game as fair as possible. Because Lamb and Mills were pretty much just dead giveaways. And from there, it just kind of came like, it was kind of easy to make a lineup. You could pretty much fit whatever stud you wanted. You had two guys, right? So essentially what happens is, even though it may seem easier for the casual player doesn't always realize you have to play these guys. And obviously when it comes down to the skill of it, you pretty much have to pick the right studs. And I think a lot of times that's one of the edges that the professional players will have, is they'll pick the right studs. For instance, Karl Anthony Towns compared to Jokic, I love them both. I had a lineup where I played them both because the value allowed me. It was clear that one was better than the other. I think Cat literally doubled the score of Jokic. So it's interesting, and it's something we have to monitor. But the bottom line is, if you have somebody who is priced as a bench player, or who's priced to play 15 to 20 minutes off the bench, and now all of a sudden you find that they're stepping into a role, starting lineup, where they're going to be playing at least 30 minutes, or just starters minutes, even if it's 28 minutes, starters minutes. And especially, there's an extra bonus if you feel like they're going to get extra usage. Then it's a no-brainer. You kind of have to lock them in. And yeah, there's going to be some nights where those guys dud, but they won't more times than not. And even if Jeremy Lamb was to dud, say he played 30 minutes and he ended up getting 19, 20 DraftKings points, you still would have been okay. He was only 3,500. So maybe today, if he does something like that, you might be a little upset. I mean, At 3,500, even if he got you 16 or 17 DraftKings points, he paid off his salary. If you're looking at the 5x rule, so I don't necessarily think that, you know, I don't think it's fadeable. There's just no point. And the same thing with Patty Mills, shooting guard and the actual guard slot on DraftKings were locked for every lineup. 100% of there's just no reason. And the funny thing is, before we got the Lamb news, the Patty Mills news we heard about, we knew about. Before we got the Lamb news, Murray was my guy. And it would have been a bigger risk, of course. He's coming off the bench. He's not guaranteed anything. He's priced accurately at 41, considering the amount of minutes and usage he gets. So that would have been a chance. I felt like Jeremy Lamb was way safer because, for one, he was even cheaper. You know, Murray was 4,100 and Lamb was 3,500. And two, Murray's still coming off the bench. He's still just a role player, a bench player. This is a situation where Lamb is now a starter. Lamb is now a key player. Now Lamb is now going to be used to close out this game. So that's your major difference. And the same thing could be said with Mills. It just makes sense. He was going to get minutes because they had nobody else to play. So that's the kind of way you have to think about it. If you get a situation, a lot of times, and I used to say this in the previous podcast, a lot of times with these slates, when the value opens up, just the way things go, like the NBA gods, if you will, Twitter, the NBA, like the injury reports and Twitter itself will tell you who you have to play. So if you want to win, it's not always about who you want to play. A lot of times it's about who you have to play. And on Monday, Jeremy Lamb and Mills, you had to play. And we'll talk about them today because they're also on the slate tonight. And they could be in a similar situation, but it's not exactly the same. But we'll touch on that. Anyway, so we're going to start, go right into the injury news. We're going to obviously go over the injuries and then go position by position as we always do, breaking down this slate with you. But like I said, I took a look and I've been having a hard time finding some favorite plays. Yeah, there's some guys I like, some guys I think are interesting, but I'm having a hard time finding like a core group. And we'll see if that changes as I go through the slate, or if anything, it'll probably change tomorrow once we get more of this injury news cleared up and whatnot. But anyway, here we go. Injuries. Nick Batum is doubtful with a migraine at Indiana. Miles Plumlee is out against Indiana. Frank Kaminsky is questionable with a shoulder. He did make his return. He played 24 minutes, but he didn't look very good. So the injury report is questionable. Lavoy Allen's questionable with a knee. Wesley Matthews is questionable with a calf. Nerlens Noel is questionable with a knee. Favors is expected to be out with his knee. Anthony Davis is questionable with an ankle. He did return to finish the game. He was hurt in the game tonight. He did return to try to finish it, but he's questionable with an ankle. We'll see if anything swells up or anything like that. Goran Dragic is probable with his eye. His eye looked nasty. He got hit in the eye and it was swollen shut. It was nasty. But apparently he's probable, so apparently the swelling must have went down. Josh McRoberts is out indefinitely with a foot. Chandler Parsons is now out indefinitely with a knee. Evan Turner is out with his hand. DeJounte Murray is questionable with a groin against Portland. Tony Parker questionable with a back against Portland. LaMarcus Aldridge is out indefinitely with a heart issue. I don't exactly know everything going there. It sounds pretty serious, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Tyreek Evans is questionable with an ankle at Phoenix. Tyreek killed me. I don't know. For those of you that follow me on Twitter, I posted up one of my lineups that completely smashed. Rubio, Towns, Rondo, it's smashed. And unfortunately, I played Tyreek Evans. Obviously, we didn't have the news about Tyreek. I thought he would play. And ended up getting I think I had 323 on DraftKings, and that was a big fat 0 for Tyreek Evans. So he really killed my shot at taking down a GPP. So Tyreek, I'm a little upset at you, but I always preach short-term memory, and I guess it really wasn't your fault if you couldn't play. So anyway, Alex Len is probable with a hip against Sacramento. Tyson Chandler's questionable. It says personal, but I think he attended the shoot-around against Sacramento, but I don't think he's been playing that much anyway. And Michael Beasley is out with a knee at the Clippers. So that's the injury. So we're going to start off here with point guard, as we always do. And, of course, like any night when Harden's on the slate, unless Westbrook is on the slate, which he is not, James Harden leads the pack. He's the most expensive point guard and shooting guard available on the slate. He's 12-6. Phenomenal matchup against the Lakers. And we've seen what this guy could do against Cleveland. He's 75.5 DraftKings points against Cleveland. His price is significantly up. This one's interesting to me because at 12-6 with a 17-point spread. Now, on Monday, we saw Jokic in a similar situation. He was hosting the Lakers. I think it was 10-4, something like that. He was $200 cheaper than Cat, I think, that night. And the spread was huge. And I decided that, maybe they won't get blown out as bad. Maybe I'll take Jokic and just kind of see what happens, see how he does, and maybe this game will stay closer than people expect. That was not the case at all. Luke Walton decided to mess with the lineup, decided to start Clarkson. I get it, he had a monster game the night before, but he decided to start Clarkson over D'Angelo Russell, and I don't think that would have made a difference. I think the Lakers are just bad, and that's not a hot take. That's obviously pretty obvious. But yeah, the Joker only got, I think he hit his floor basically. Now his floor is still in the 30s, which is impressive, but he hit his floor of 30. The game got out of hand. They didn't need him to play anymore, and I'm a little concerned that could happen with Harden. Now, I think Jokic might have been a little popular that day. I'm not positive. If he was, I can see people looking at this game and thinking the same thing. So it's possible. I'm not going to tell you to fully fade him. I can never tell people confidently to fade Westbrook or fade Harden completely. I don't think I'm going to be playing him all that much unless significant value opens up where I really can, because I truly think that this Rockets team is actually pretty good, and I really think they're going to mash on the Lakers. Now, I could be wrong, and that's why I'm not telling you to completely fade them. On paper, it's a dream spot. Who's going to stop him? I'll tell you who will stop him: D'Antoni, if they're up by 30 points in the third quarter. I can see him getting pulled. Not to mention, you do have some narratives. Lou Williams is going to be hosting his former team. You don't know if maybe they're going to try to give him some extra run, let Harden rest a little bit. And I'm not saying they will. They've never done that before. I don't see why they would start now, but it's a possibility, right? Not to mention, in general, aside from this big explosion against Cleveland, we've seen Harden's usage take a dive. And in his last 4 games, twice, he barely broke 50. 52 DraftKings points against Utah, 53.25 against Chicago. So yeah, this is a pace-up spot, and it almost seems like almost impossible for him to bust here. But the thing is, what would you consider busting? If he gets you basically at his price right now, think about what he needs to pay off that 5x at 12.6. You know, it's a hefty amount. So I'm not saying to fade him completely. If you're doing multiple lineups, you're gonna want at least 1 or 2 with him. But I do think that things might open up and we might be able to look at other options today. John Wall is 9.7. It's a pace down spot. I'm not crazy about it. He's coming off a stinker against Minnesota, but you have to understand he was not just him. The entire team was exhausted. They really were. He shot 6 for 16 from the field. That's 37.5%. He hasn't shot that bad since March 5th against Orlando. So I think it was more of a case of exhaustion. The whole team just seemed tired. He's 9,700. His price is right, and now he's playing Dallas. He played Dallas one time this year, and it's a pace down spot. Yeah, he's still got 50.5 DraftKings points. So if he gets that at 9.7, that's right on cue. I still don't think I put him in cash just because he is playing Dallas. But if you think about who he's going to be matched up against, he's going to have Yogi Ferrell for most of the game. So defensively, that does not scare me. I do like Wall at 9,700. We got Giannis at 9,600. He's obviously small forward eligible. That's probably where I prefer to play him personally. Now, he's played the Clippers one time. He got 49.8 DraftKings points against them. I rode the boat against Memphis. I thought I'd be contrarian and try him in a couple lineups, and he did absolutely nothing. That's back-to-back games where he really kind of stunk it up. Against Minnesota, I think it was 36.5 DraftKings points at 10-1. And against Memphis, 31.75 at 9-8. So he's not playing all that well. He's not as reliable as he seemed at one point earlier in the season. Obviously, we saw him put up 71.75 against the Knicks at 9-8, so we know his upside is there. But I think we've learned that it has to be a certain type of team, especially a team that can't protect the rim, and I think the Clippers are a little better at that. So I'm not crazy about him, although if you want to be contrarian and you want to play him at small forward, I'm not against that completely. Kemba Walker is 8,600 against Indiana. Kemba gets a slight usage bump without Batum. So if Batum can't go, obviously you're going to have to consider Jeremy Lamb, but we'll talk about Lamb when we get to shooting guards. In the meantime, I'm talking about Kemba. And he's been extremely consistent. One game where he busted, and that was against Orlando. And he only played 24 minutes, so the game got out of hand. I don't think it was necessarily him busting because of his performance. He was shooting 69%. It's just his team completely thrashed Orlando, and he didn't really have to play. So he's got a matchup with Indiana. Indiana's on the back end of a back-to-back. They just lost to the Knicks after a horrible offensive effort. They only put up 80-something points in the loss. And they were winning most of the game, too. So I think this is a good spot for Kemba. He's on the road. I know that his splits, he's a home guy. Everybody knows that they play him at home. Maybe that'll lower his ownership a little bit. If it did, that'd be great. In 3 games against Indiana this season, he's averaging 41.8 DraftKings points. So that's not all that impressive. But if that's his average and you want to say that's around his floor, at 8,600, he's not going to hurt you. So Kemba's been playing phenomenal. I don't see any reason that he would stop here. So I think Kemba's definitely in play at 8,600. Isaiah Thomas against Minnesota Isaiah Thomas is 8.5. So I know that Bradley's back and this usage has kind of drifted. Isaiah's been under 40 DraftKings points in 3 straight contests. So it seems like they're kind of alleviating him a little bit. Now against Chicago, that was a big blowout from the start. So IT2 only played 24 minutes in that game. But he was on pace to have another one of his monster games. I mean, you're talking about 10 minutes that was taken away from him. He probably could have put up another at least 15, maybe even 20 DraftKings points there. So he was on his way to a huge game before he got pulled. Now, he was playing a Chicago team that's been extremely, extremely bad against point guards this season. But still, I think he's interesting. Now, when I look at when I go back and I try to look at at a different kind of DVP chart to see what teams have been bad, recently at point guards, the Chicago Bulls are second behind the Portland Trail Blazers. They've been really bad against guards in general. When we I'm looking for Minnesota right now because I just want to see. It'll give us an idea of how well they're playing defensively lately. Let me see here. So they're more towards. Okay, here we go. Yeah, they're way towards the bottom. They have not been a good team to target point guards against. So at 8,500, he's in play and he's at home. And I think Rubio is going to be way chalky today. And I understand he's in a phenomenal matchup. And we'll get to Rubio in a second. But as far as IT2, I think at 8,500, I think that's fair for him. But again, so far, I just named off a bunch of cards. I don't love anybody just yet. I do like the next guy, Eric Bledsoe, 8,400 against Sacramento. The problem is I think I might look like Booker a little bit more. Now, just like what I was saying, what I've been doing recently is going back. I like to look at not just DVP, but I like to look at recent DVP. So I like to look at last week. And when I look at this list, the Sacramento Kings, believe it or not, even despite having Darren Collison, who's a decent defender for the most part, they've been getting destroyed by point guards recently. I think they're fifth worst in the last week at how many yielding DraftKings points to point guards. And a lot of it seems to come from assists at 13. So this is a situation where I think Bledsoe is certainly in play. I don't typically like to play Bledsoe and Booker together unless it's like a short slate. And also what concerns me about Bledsoe is his minutes have really come down. So we saw a stretch where he was just mashing, and then he just kind of went bad for a while before the All-Star break, and then his coach came out and said that they felt like he was tired. So since coming back, there's no reason. Minnesota's been out of contention for a while. But if we look 31, 31, 32, 27, those are his minutes in his last 4 games. And that's uncharacteristic. This is a guy that we've seen play 40 minutes, 34 minutes, and higher. So it seems to me like they're being a little cautious with him because there's no point in burning him to death. So his performances haven't been great either. Over his last 3 games, 33% from the field, 25% from the field, 33% from the field. So he's been struggling a little bit. But his assist numbers are there. So if the Kings give up a lot of assists, it's because other players on their team are the ones who are struggling defensively. It makes more sense. He drives to the hole, should find somebody open to hit a shot. Maybe that guy is Booker. But at 8,400, Bledsoe's certainly in play. So it's weird because we still got more to talk about with point guards. But obviously, as you can see, it's still relatively deep. It's just tough to find guys that I love. Damian Lillard at 8,300. If Parker and Murray are out, you can still consider him. He's coming off a pretty good outing, and he's been playing extremely well. His price is way down. He's getting a Spurs discount, even though they're not the same Spurs right now, especially if Parker and Murray continue to sit out. They're not the same Spurs, so he's interesting at that point. CP3 against Milwaukee, 8,200. If you play him, it's just based off price. Milwaukee's been pretty good against point guards all year, but at that price, it's hard to kind of pass that up. Mike Conley against Chicago. This is the time. I don't know. To me, it seems like Conley. We see him we had a decent game against Milwaukee, who we just said is pretty good against point guards. That's the game where Conley kind of broke out of his little funk and played well. He's got an awesome matchup. It's an ugly total, ugly pace game, but he's got an awesome matchup at 7,600 against the Bulls. D'Angelo Russell, we got to see. We don't know. I'm not too crazy about him in general, but we don't know if he's coming off the bench. We don't know if he's starting, so it's going to be tough to gauge. Plus, his team is predicted to get blown out. Ricky Rubio, 7,400. It's about time this guy's price came up because he's been mashing, and it took 60 DraftKings points performance to finally get it done. His price is way up. He's going to be super popular because of his matchup with Isaiah Thomas. He's going to be chalk. He's 7,400. I understand why he's going to be chalk. If you want to go there in cash, I get it. But in GPPs, keep in mind he will be chalky. That doesn't mean don't play him. That's not what that means. There's good chalk and bad chalk. Just know he'll be chalk. Goran Dragic at 7,200 is certainly interesting. I don't mind him. Now, he did get hurt. He only played 17 minutes against Toronto, and then he missed his next game. So he's a little rested. His eyes should be a little bit better. And believe it or not, Holiday hasn't been all that great lately. In the last week, his team anyway has been yielding a good amount of fantasy points to point guard, so he's certainly in play. Let's see. Jeff Teague is cheap at 6,500 against Kemba. I think that's a decent matchup for him. He hasn't been playing well lately, but he is cheap. And then Rajon Rondo is 5,300. I played him as soon as I found out he was starting. I just figured it was a great spot against Kemba. And Rondo is still good. It's just his coach doesn't like him or whatever the case is. But Rondo, he might not be a good defender. I'm not saying he's a good actual NBA player. But for DFS purposes, he's still good. He's still going to hustle and get you rebounds. He's still going to get you assists in the right setting. So I don't mind him. He took 15 shots in 36 minutes against Charlotte. And he helped get his team a win that they desperately needed. So I think Rondo is actually okay. Now, Patty Mills is no longer a plug-and-play option. Now, I'm not telling you not to play him. As a matter of fact, I think I probably will. I may end up playing him if there's no other value that opens up. If we find out Parker and Murray are out again. Now, the thing is, you have to realize is the reason he was a plug-and-play on Monday, this is what I was talking about earlier, was because of his price. He was just so cheap. That's no longer the case. DraftKings raised his price. So he's no longer that gimme at 4,400. See, at 4,400, if he were to get you 20 DraftKings points and that's it, you would have been okay with that. Now he's 53. If he gets anything under 25, you're going to feel that a little bit more here. So the expectations have kind of risen. Now, he does have a phenomenal matchup against Portland. Damian Lillard has been bad defensively, especially against point guards who can score. And in these last two contests without Parker and Murray, we've seen Patty Mills take 13 shot attempts in each game. Granted, one game he shot 61%, one he shot 38%. Still, he's been taking the shots. So I definitely think Mills is in play only if Tony Parker and Murray are still out. But we don't know that for sure, so you're going to have to keep an eye on that. But again, he's no longer a gimme because he's 53. Is he still a good play if those two are out? I think so, because I think 5,300 is still too cheap for a point guard in a good matchup at home. But keep in mind that he's no longer 4,400. He's now 53. So your expectation of him needs to be a little bit higher. Either way, as long as if I think those two are out, and I think he's going to get at least 30 minutes, I still think Patty Mills is a great play even at 5,300. Now we're going to move on to shooting guard here. We're running, we got to accelerate a little bit. We talked about Harden. We talked about Bledsoe. Bradley Beal's in a phenomenal spot at 77. I don't see anybody who's going to stop him here. Dion Waiters against Miami. I like him better when Dragic or Hassan Whiteside or somebody is out. Still, Dion Waiters is a decent play. 7,100. We know he's a guy that's going to continue to take a lot of shots, regardless of whether they're falling or not. So he's certainly an interesting play. I don't think he's necessarily trustable in cash per se, but he's certainly a decent play overall. And the Pelicans have really struggled against shooting guards in general this season. So certainly in play. Nick Batum is 7K, but he's doubtful. If he plays, you can consider him. I'm not dying to, but at 7K, you can certainly consider him. McCollum against San Antonio, that should be interesting. McCollum's only 7K. Last time I took him, I think he busted on me a little bit. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure. I think it might have been tonight. But he's got a matchup with the Spurs. The Spurs have been bad against shooting guards all season, and that trend has continued even as of last week. So I have no problem playing McCollum here. I think that's an interesting pivot off of Lillard, as a matter of fact. I love Booker. Booker's probably one of the only guys I really like, and that's a little scary. It seems like an obvious play. He may be chalky. He's been playing extremely well lately. He's been playing monster minutes aside from Bledsoe, who hasn't been playing minutes, but Booker has been getting minutes. And Sacramento, we watched what Bradley Beal did to this team the other day, dropping 70 DraftKings points on him. So Booker's a phenomenal play at 6,700. He may be chalky. If he's chalky, then I'm going to have to find a pivot in GPPs. But if he's not chalky, I'll be all over him in GPPs. He may even be a cash game play for me. That's how much I like him in this matchup. Seth Curry at 6,300. You could certainly take a shot there because this is a guy who's going to continue to get minutes. However, I would no longer trust him in cash. He's been suspect. His last two games, he's really struggled, only taking 8 shot attempts in each game and only making 3 out of those 16 shots. He's been ice cold. I think Avery Bradley's very interesting. Jordan Clarkson, you can give it a shot with. Patrick Beverley, even you could try, but just keep in mind it's a fast-paced game with a high total, but a very good chance of a blowout. And I know I always preach to don't fade the blowout because a lot of times they're wrong. But when the spread is that big, they're typically right more times than not. So I'm a little worried about the game in general. But if I was going to take somebody out of this bunch, it'd probably be Lou Williams at 5,700 playing his old team. Just because he's a bench guy, he could get more run even in a blowout. And I could see a situation where they want to let him kind of be the guy and just really just kind of crap on his old team. I wouldn't be surprised. So at 5,700, I think for tournaments he's interesting. Jeremy Lamb is 5,600 against Indiana. Now, he played 31 minutes against Chicago. Chicago's been struggling against shooting guards lately. He's 5,600, and I would imagine he's going to be mega chalk because even the fish who did not play him on Monday are not going to want to miss the boat again. It's different now. He's priced up. It's not the same kind of situation. He's priced up, and he was in a very good matchup. The Bulls, or believe it or not, over the last week have been third in yielding fantasy points to shooting guards. He's got a matchup now with the Indiana Pacers, who have been pretty good against shooting guards this in the last week or so. So I'm not crazy about Lamb. I think I'm going to fade Lamb. And if an interesting pivot, now I know this is GPP only, but remember, Bellinelli's going to get a bump also. Bellinelli's 3,600, and he's pretty much a lock for at least 20 minutes, at least. So at 3,600, it's not going to take him much to hit value, and he's playing Indiana. I'm not crazy about the matchup again, but it's an option. I would rather play against the Indiana second unit defensively than play against their first. So Bellinelli, I would prefer to play over Lamb, I think. I think Lamb is going to be mega chalk, and I think this is a situation where he could potentially bust. I'm not saying he will, and I may play him a little bit in some tournaments, but I'm definitely not going to trust him in cash. 5,600 for Jeremy Lamb, in my opinion, is just too much when the matchup is not all that attractive, and he's going to be mega chalky, which I would imagine that he is. I think that's pretty much it. That's it. Oh, Buddy Hield is interesting at 4.6 against Phoenix. That was worth mentioning. Andrew Wiggins is. I'm sorry. I'll move on to small forward. We'll get to Wiggins. Kawhi Leonard at 9.8. You know he's an elite play. His usage is through the roof. There's not much else to say about him. Other than the concussion. Jimmy Butler's price has come down. He's 8.8 on DraftKings. Certainly in play, but remember, it's an ugly total, ugly matchup. It's going to be tough there. Paul George, 8,300. He's got a matchup with MKG, although Charlotte has been very good to attack small forwards against them as of late. So I think Paul George is okay. Just don't know if I want him on the back end of a back-to-back when there's other guys. Gordon Hayward against Detroit, it's another slow matchup. You can certainly take him if you want, but I typically don't like to take Hayward unless Hill is out or Hood is out or even Gobert's out. And as far as I know, they're all playing. Andrew Wiggins, 6,900, man. I keep playing this guy in lineups, and he keeps burning me. But you know what? As long as his price keeps dropping, I'm going to keep playing him because the shot attempts are there. 15, 13, 21, 17. That's the shot attempts he's been taking. He just hasn't been hitting them. So at 6,900, it's now going to take even less for him to hit value, and I'm going to keep riding that train because even so, his usage is high enough. He's going to keep taking those shots. So I love Wiggins at 6,900. If he keeps burning me, so be it. I'm just going to keep waiting for his price to continue to drop and keep playing him. Harrison Barnes, Otto Porter, obviously interesting. Chris Middleton's a guy that should take a lot of shots, although he might see some tougher defense against the Clippers. He's still certainly in play. TJ Warren against Sacramento. If Tyreek Evans is out, I prefer Warren then. But if Evans plays, I'm a little concerned about the defense he might see there. Trevor Ariza, certainly in an interesting spot today, 5,100. And he's been playing a lot more consistently lately. His price has gone up, but I think that's a matchup thing. Now, if Batum is out, which he's doubtful, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is a guy that I think I'll look to play. They're going to need him on the court to cover Paul George, and he's known for more for his defense. He's very aggressive on the boards. At least he tries to be. And with Batum out, this is a guy they rely on heavily for minutes. So in cash games, if I want to save some money at small forward, I preferred him at 4,900. He's up to 51, but that's still not bad. Even though the matchup isn't that great, I don't mind Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. And as a matter of fact, I'm curious now to check and see how these small forwards have been doing against Indiana. And yeah, believe it or not, they haven't been so bad to target people against. Indiana hasn't been so impressive considering Paul George is their guy. So I think MKG is perfectly in play. Definitely an option for me. Vince Carter is also somebody I wanted to mention. Let me see what his price is. With Parsons out, they're going to now need a scorer to fill in that role. Vince Carter played 30 minutes against Milwaukee, and he got 41.75 DraftKings points. I don't expect him to do the same against Chicago. But if he's going to play 30 minutes at 4K, he's certainly interesting because he's a guy that they could rely on to shoot. Now, he shot 100% he shot 8 shots. He was 8 for 8. That is not going to keep happening. But what I like is he had 3 steals, he had 2 assists, 5 rebounds. So it's more of the way he got there. He was 6 for 6 from the three-point line. I highly, highly doubt that's happening against Chicago. It's an ugly pace-down spot, but believe it or not, small forwards against Chicago has actually been a thing over the last week or so. So I think VC is interesting for a punt option and for tournaments only. Moving on to power forward, you got Cat 10-9, certainly in a monster spot. AD, if he plays, 10-4, interesting. If he doesn't play, Boogie becomes the play at 9,500. I like Anthony Davis and Boogie both. Whichever one's going to match up against Whiteside is the guy that you're going to want. Blake Griffin at 7,900 is extremely attractive. I like this. I like this spot. Milwaukee's been really bad against power forwards lately, and I love this spot. They've been bad against bigs in general. I love Blake Griffin, 7,900. Another one of those players I just really like. Randall certainly in a decent spot. You just don't know how many minutes he's going to play if this game gets out of hand. Marvin Williams, even with Kaminsky back, just went nuts. Played 38 minutes. Second game, he has been on fire. So fade at your own risk. His price is expensive. 6,500 for Marvin Williams just sounds crazy. But hey, he's been killing. What else can you really say? Tobias Harris, Frank Kaminsky at 57. I don't know what's. I think David Lee's very interesting at 5,500. We've seen that he finally got 30 minutes against Atlanta. That wasn't a tough matchup against Millsap. Yeah, he wasn't all that impressive. He hit value at 28. He surpassed his value, and he was in a bad matchup. Now he's in a good matchup against Portland, who struggles against power forwards. If Lee's going to get the run, I certainly like Lee a lot. Willie Cauley-Stein remains to be a solid play for me. I like taking the guy. His price is still in that mid-range, and he's a guy that's been getting monster minutes lately. And he does have that upside like we saw against Washington, so I think he's certainly in play. Even James Johnson at 5'8", I think he's certainly in play against New Orleans. They're going to need some big physical guys to help out Whiteside, and I think James Johnson's a guy they might use at the 4. Moving on to center, we talked about Towns, Davis, Cousins. Whiteside at 81 is certainly in play just because of the fact that they're going to need the big man on the court, so that's going to mean they're going to rely on him. Marc Gasol is very, very interesting. Julius Randle center eligible, not crazy about that. Rudy Gobert 6,900 against Drummond, that's interesting, very interesting to me. Nurkic against San Antonio at 6'7" is okay. I'm not dying to play it though. Allen Williams certainly interesting against the Kings. Al Horford at 5,700. That's way too cheap. Cat is not a good defender. 5,700 for Horford, I think, is a steal in this matchup. I know he's been mediocre lately, but this is a really good matchup for him, so I'd be interested. Clint Capella, certainly interesting. Zubac is now 5,300. He's no longer that dirt cheap price that everybody kind of got used to. His price did come up. He's 5,300. That was the first time he got 30 minutes, so we don't know. And I know that Magic Johnson has said he wants him to play 30 minutes. This was the first time. We said that a few days ago and then played 17 and 19 minutes after that. This is the first time he really got the run, and it happened to be on the back end of a back-to-back. We know Mozgov has been shut down for the season, so I think that could open up things for Zubac. Maybe he gets more run. If he does, against Houston's a great spot because we saw that he will play in a blowout. Denver was blowing them out completely, and he still played. So I think Zubac is very, very interesting at 5,300. If I find out Zubac is going to play a full allotment of minutes, if he's going to play another 30 minutes, I may put him in cash. Listen, he shot 12 for 15 from the field. That's not going to happen every time. He got 11 rebounds, and that double-double is something that's very, very possible, especially in a pace-up spot against Houston where there should be plenty of rebounds to go around. So Zubac is very interesting there. Anyway, that's going to do it. I know we didn't cover everybody. There's a lot of guys I probably missed out. But like I said, there's not too many guys that I love in the situation. There's a bunch of guys you kind of like, kind of guys you can see. Oh, I could see playing him, yeah. But there's not too many guys that I love. And again, that could change with some news. Maybe we find out, key guys are out, or maybe some guys are resting. So I don't know. We'll find out. But anyway, that's it. So tomorrow, hopefully, I haven't talked to him yet, but hopefully we can confirm. I'm hoping on Thursday's pod we can get Fuego Steve back on to talk to us. There's another Westbrook slate. How about that? But anyway, guys, appreciate you watching. If you're not a member of WiseTake.com, please go to WiseTake.com and sign up now. Membership is free. You get access to our free NBA projections, cheat sheets, all that kind of great stuff. And we have a forums on there. We're trying to start a community here, so we're trying to get things going. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button. We really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Subscribe to the channel. Definitely goes a long way with us here. Do me a favor, and if you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow, leave us some reviews. If you're listening on iTunes, subscribe to the channel and give us some feedback. Rate us, whether it's good or bad. I don't care. Rate us. Bump us up those charts. And I always tell you guys, I love hearing feedback. I try to make the show as much as you guys would want it to be. I try to customize it for your guys' need, for what you guys are looking for. So if there's something you think I can improve on, something you want to hear more about, maybe you have some questions you want me to do some Q&As at the end of every podcast, that's fine too. I'm open to any suggestions. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for us. And it's a 10-game slate, good GPP slate. We'll see if some things open up. Maybe it'll even be a decent cash game slate. As always, guys, good luck.